Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Heiler. I'm not Steve Germain, but I'm president at Locality on the broadcast side. Happy to have Casey join us today. As we just said, it's no introduction necessary, but just to make sure everybody is aware of the scope of experience that comes with Casey's engagement here in Detroit. 17 years at BBDO, where we actually overlapped for a little bit in our career, working on automotive for the Chrysler brands and Dodge brands, and then moved over to the client side and worked on Fiat for 7 years. And then, as we all know, really came over and engaged at the CMO level at Rocket Mortgage. But you've got a native Detroiter, a Michigan State grad, and somebody who has just been an ambassador across all of the things that he is involved in. So very grateful to have Casey join us today for the end of our great conference today. And I think we're going to show a video as Casey comes up. Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it. It's okay, we just need a little volume. I jumped in here at the last minute, but Casey and I have done this before, so I appreciate.
Yeah, we'll just get going.
We'll get it going, and look, we've come off of some huge events that Rocket's been a part of, and as you go into 25, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Rocket Mortgage is going to be involved in?
Yeah, and hopefully it's still, or Andrew, if you don't mind, forward it. Should go. You go. Yeah, so, Ann, first of all, you just jumped in about 5 minutes ago, and shit, I grew up with Ann and her brother, so it was always familiar to, it was great always to see you, and so thank you for jumping in. And, you know, as I'm in the midst of my 8th season at Rocket, and I'm so blessed to be part of an organization. You know, I share with people, being born and raised in Detroit, you know, we'll call it a typical Detroiter, you know. My great-grandparents immigrated to this country and seeking a better life, and they worked in the factories for, 30, 40 years, and my parents were born in Detroit, and they left Detroit in the late 60s, early 70s, and like a lot of folks like myself that grew up, second, third generation in Detroit, and, to be able to work at a company and organization that is doing so much in the city of Detroit, no different than what Tom Gores is is working to do here, and the Illiches and the Penskes, and, General Motors and Ford now with the Michigan, with the Central Station. So, there's been a lot of, a lot of evolution. And, for those that you may not know, we're now a 39-year-old startup, if you will. I mean, our
wouldn't have guessed that 39, in a million years.
39 years. And, our chairman and founder, Dan Gilbert, same story like me. Like grandparents here, his dad owned a bar, or, his father owned a bar at 7 Mile and Woodward, and went to Michigan State, and he started hustling pizzas. And Dan, he claims he has the Michigan State delivery record. It's total bullshit, but it's a story that he tells all the time.
It's not, you can't.
Like, he loves telling the story. Like, he has this, he had a system, and he's like, I own I don't know if it was Domino's or Gumby's or some pizza place up there at the time, but he started hustling mortgages in college. And then, he made a little bit of a run with it. And then after college, him and his brother and another partner who's still at the company, they're like, hey, let's make a run at it. And, here we are 39 years later. And 14 years ago, the story that, is told is, we were 2,000 team members out in the suburbs, and we had offices in Livonia, Novi, Northville, and it was like, all right, we need to think about a campus. We're in all these office parks all over, and if you think about what was happening in mid to late 2000s, Silicon Valley, whatever, and obviously as the crisis was hitting, unfortunately, the thought was, all right, we're going to build a campus. All right, let's go buy land, in South Lyon, Northville, whatever it might be, and there was one guy in the room that said, you know what, I think I want to go downtown. And he carried the veto vote, and nobody wanted to go downtown. And the story as it's been handed to me, and I feel like it's part of my job to tell that story, at the organization is, Dan said, our city needs us. And wouldn't it be amazing if we look back one day and say, look what we've done here, and if it doesn't work, at least we say we tried.
You know what, I think that's an amazing thing to say, because for those of you that are not from Detroit, the courage and the leadership that decision made, and sort of how that then cascaded through a lot of what everyone sees now today happening in Detroit. It's remarkable. And it took that business leadership it took what we see here today with the Pistons. It took everybody moving back downtown. It's remarkable.
I mean, it kind of feeds into, as we moved downtown 14 years ago, he also said, like, I can't do this by myself. I need others to follow. And, whether you're from here, from Detroit, and you know the story, but now you look at it 14 years later, and, when Tom is, got the team and Arn Tellem and, moved from the Palace down here, and I look about what's happening here in Midtown, and if anyone, and I know they just stopped tours, but, like, Corktown and what's happening there with the Michigan Central Station and how that's going to be built, going out towards down Michigan Avenue and with the plans with DCFC, like, it's awesome. Like, I love having partners come into town and, media companies, agencies, whatever it might be, and it's always the same. Like, when's the last time you were here? And then somebody never has been here, and it's like, I just love hearing those stories about, I haven't been here. Last time I was here was in 2005 during the Super Bowl. It's like,
right.
A lot of things have changed.
And it was rainy, and it wasn't great.
Yeah, exactly right. And, even as a company, now we're 100-plus companies, in the portfolio. Rocket Mortgage being the largest one is obviously, and we have a lot of brands in our fintech portfolio, but, there's 85 other brands that we make investments in and, at various stages. Obviously Bedrock with our real estate arm. I know we had Bedrock here earlier today. StockX, Shinola, and, and some guys like to, buy, ice cream on a hot summer day. Dan likes to buy companies, and he bought Thesaurus and Dictionary.com because he loves words. I still have no fucking idea what we're doing with those companies, but we got those, and I got to spend money with them. So
yeah, and look, we've been talking sports today,
yep.
But the way that your partnerships weave into your partnerships with the sports franchises that you're involved in. Talk a little bit about how that's so important to your brand.
Yeah, and so a great question, and I'll make sure I'm forward in here. Is it going there, Andrea? It's all right. There we go. And so, so we'll leave it here, and then. We're going through, we're at a really exciting inflection point. As I joined the company in 2017, we were Quicken Loans, and we had the product Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Quite honestly, we were licensing the name from Intuit. So as we're looking to expand our fintech portfolio, we knew that one, we had to obtain the name back, and then we could not use Quicken outside of mortgages. So I led the rebrand effort from Quicken Loans to Rocket Mortgage, and then the IPO in 2020. And we're in a major retransformation inflection point with the organization. We have a new CEO, our first external CEO in 39 years. He just celebrated his first anniversary yesterday. Varun Krishna can join us from Intuit. We have Jonathan Meldenhall, who really hasn't made his presence felt here in Detroit yet. He will very shortly. He's our new global CMO, and as we pulled together PR, marketing, our digital agency, and growth marketing. He comes from Airbnb and Coke and has worked on some major iconic stuff. And, we're in the midst of retransforming the brand, and not only from mortgage, but home ownership. And so we have a new mission at the organization of help everyone home. The American dream, even though it is more challenging to buy a home than ever for you and I, but certainly as I think about our kids, as they grow, Gen Zs and Alphas right behind them, him, her, or they, like, it is not easy. And so, our mission is how can we help everyone home? And then in the partnership experiential space, this is our new mission, is help everyone home. And helping everyone home is also, as we think about growth audiences, 55% of first-time home buyers up till 2030 are in the Hispanic households. Black home ownership, albeit the gap is still too wide, that black home ownership continues to grow 2 and 3% every year. And then we think about Gen Z and first-time home buyers and the influence of single women. And so that's an exciting thing for us because we've been really focused, we'll call it on the core general audience, if you will, but now it's like we're expanding, not only from a marketing standpoint, but product, our influence in state and federal levels, and making sure that underserved communities. I mean, obviously, as you well know, and if you're not here from Detroit, it's not just, throwing up buildings and, staging NFL draft. It's also like, how can we help lives better in every community, not only the ones that we serve?
Nicole was here earlier.
Yeah, she's the best, yeah.
And her new role over at Northwestern Mutual, but she had a very similar thing to say of, it is our corporate responsibility to these underserved communities. So how do you, now I'm going off script a little bit, but how do you make sure that the brand is making all those touch points and all of those things you just rattled off, not moving from your core brand, but making sure that at each of these communities, you're doing those things that extend to help everyone?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, there's from a product standpoint, the product being mortgages or financial services. I mean, yes, we're in mortgage. We're also in real estate business. We made a really key acquisition in Q4 of 21. Truebill. We rebranded it Rocket Money, which is personal finance. We have a credit card. It's only 22% of Rocket Money subscribers are homeowners, so it really fares well with a Gen Z and an alpha audience behind them. But it's also the work that we're doing in the communities, again, at the state and the federal level, of how do we make products or funding available, whether it's in underserved communities, or making products available to communities that otherwise might not have a chance to be a homeowner. I mean, everything we do at Rocket is rooted in our foundational values as isms, and it's like, we'll figure it out, yes before no, every client, every time, no exceptions, no excuses. And so whenever we're at these inflection points like we are now, we go back to what Dan rolled out in 1985, was the foundational values, and that guides everything that we're doing.
And there's a cool product, and I won't get the name right, but the app you plug into that lets you know that you're paying for too many things.
That's Rocket Money, yeah.
Yeah, it's the most amazing thing
Yeah.
ever.
I don't use it because it would be beeping every 2 seconds. So yeah.
It's really very cool.
Yeah.
So you talked about it a little bit, but you have an obvious connection with the local communities and your engagement here in Detroit, but it extends to Cleveland, it extends to Phoenix. So how does a national brand like Rocket also make sure that, how do you do those partnerships and how do you make those decisions? Because hundreds of them must come at you every single day.
Yeah, the phone rings, and then Andrew, if you don't mind forwarding one at least, you can go another one. Why don't we do another one? All right, we'll throw this one. There should be a video that plays, if not. But listen, we do a lot of partnerships at a national scale. As we were really particularly at Quicken, and then certainly with the transition to the Rocket Mortgage brand and almost devaluing. I always use the example of the rebrand from Quicken to Rocket, kind of like from Comcast to Xfinity. I mean, it's been Xfinity for 10, 12, 15 years. Hell, I don't even know. But I still call it Comcast, but, they started plowing billions of dollars into Xfinity probably 15 years ago. But so we've used sports and sports partnerships as a large platform, obviously. High reach connectivity, whether it's, from, awareness consideration down to the B2B level and community engagement. And, when we moved downtown Detroit, Dan, and going back to the story of, we're asking others to follow, Dan's like, we need to be bringing and shining a spotlight on the communities that we serve. We have we've been as high as 25,000. We have 16,000 team members here in downtown Detroit. We're the largest employer in downtown Detroit. And when Dan says, I don't make sure it's not just we're coming down here, we're always still doing things to rise and rise the waters, if you will, in the city. And so how do we bring a spotlight? And so we're really actively involved. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story how the Rocket Mortgage Classic came to be. We were in PGA Tour Golf, and we were in D.C. with Tiger Woods, and the Tiger Woods Foundation was called the Quicken Loans National at the time. I joined the company in April, and the tournament was in June, and our CEO said, hey, when you go to the tournament in June, tell Jay Monahan we're out. I'm like, why are we out? He's like,
no,
we want this to be in Detroit, and we've been with the PGA Tour for 5 years, and Tiger has been, he was going through his things at the time, and we're no closer to Detroit. I'm like, well, why in the fuck didn't you tell him? Like, I'm the new guy here, and so anyway, I flew in June, I flew to DC, and I sat with Jay Monahan. I said, we're out, and I go, unless the only way we can keep going is if we have a pathway to an event in Detroit. And so they called us about 6 months later and came in, and we put the deal back together. And then all of a sudden, so I took it to Dan. He's like, yep, I'm in. It was the quickest decision ever. I mean, this was at the time, a $60, $70 million investment. And then it was like, I have no fucking idea how to put on a golf tournament. I have zero idea. I've never done this before, but whenever it is, we'll figure it out. And we stood up the Rocket Mortgage Classic in 14 months. Normally, a PGA Tour event takes 2 years to stand up from soup to nuts. And in the first year of the Rocket Mortgage Classic at the Detroit Golf Club, of which across 42 PGA Tour events, only 2 are in an urban core. East Lake in Atlanta, I was just down there last week for the Tour Championship, and if anyone knows Atlanta and East Lake, like, there's similar stories of kind of like where 7 Mile and Woodward is, and that tournament's also been in place for 20 plus years, and it's going through its revitalization. And our first year of the Rocket Mortgage Classic, we were the most awarded event in Detroit. 25% of our vendors were minority owned, 50% of our partners were Michigan-based local companies, and and then the next vision was the NFL draft. And
amazing.
Did you go?
Show of hands, who was here?
Yeah,
it was unbelievable.
It was 6, 7 years ago. We started talking with the Lions and approaching the NFL, and about coming to Detroit, and it was like, sure, pat us on the head, and sure, we'll come to Detroit. And I know, like, seriously, like, and like, well, hotels and space and the NFL draft, had moved from New York and was starting to go around the country, and we started getting momentum behind it. And in Cleveland in 2020, I had a chance to meet with Roger Goodell one-on-one. We're a partner with the NFL, and I pitched him on why Detroit. And about 3-4 months later, they came back and said, and then we're like, holy shit, we have no idea how to pull this off. And I will tell you, and I was part of the planning committee, and like the way that the public, the private, and the corporate sector came together. And we had audacious plans. And I will tell you, in that first day when I started, I was out there butt early in the morning, and I started to watch the crowd form. I was sick to my stomach, and Dan was there, and it was like, you just don't know. It's like, you build it, and will they come? And 275,000 people. And I was up on the rooftop of one of our buildings looking down, and I was emotional. I was like, holy shit, I think we're gonna pull this off. And I'll never forget, it was like the 9th pick, and our vice chairman and myself, we were invited backstage to meet with the commissioner. And he had just announced 275,000, and we're backstage and high-fiving each other, and our PR guy was there with us, and he goes, you might want to get ready to tell the country that you're going to beat Nashville. I'm like, it's Thursday, dude. Like, I love the NFL, but once you're past pick 20, I don't know who the defensive end for North Dakota State is.
But they kept
that's going
coming.
to, like, and then Saturday was 225,000, and I think it was like 275, 300,000 on Sunday, and it was like, of all the things that we've had a chance to do, that was like, I'm still have chills of like, and because what that did is it just shined a spotlight on the city. And my biggest fear from the moment, we opened the gates to the moments they closed was something would happen of which the narrative would be, what did you expect?
I know.
You're in Detroit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
but like everyone, whether it was the Pat McAfees, the networks, players, and we in the NFL, like I was just with the NFL, I was at Fanatics Fest a couple weeks ago, and I was with the NFL, and they were just like still chirping in my ear about how amazing everything. Like, you guys said you were going to do it, and we didn't believe you, and y'all pulled it off.
So and we're still going to go off script because I could just riff with you for hours, but you've got brand folks in the room here that have influence over those corporate decisions, and you just said something important, which is it took corporate commitment along with the city, along with the volunteerism, along with the right event.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend that happens? How do we replicate that across the U.S.? How do we make this happen?
I'll give you a great example of that. And I think we're so fortunate. And again, for those of us that are here in Detroit, you understand it. But we like to take care of each other, if you will. And the brands and the companies are here. And I'll give you a couple examples. Is when we were standing up the Rocket Mortgage Classic, I'm an unofficial real estate broker. Like, I've helped fill a lot of spaces. Like, I'll call media companies and agencies. I'll get trade desk to get, whatever. Or it's like I hand out invoices after the upfronts. I'm like, you got a chalet, like at the Classic. But, I help sell sponsorships to the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And, I called up Melissa Grady at Cadillac, and it was like, yes, we'll help.
Right.
I call Andrea Brimmer at Ally, like, we compete against each other.
Right.
And Andrea Brimmer's like, we're in. Will you help us up at the Ally Challenge? Yes. Right. I can call Greg Hamilton at Little Caesars, and I don't know if that happens, no offense, in New York or LA or other markets, but, even though we compete, with an Ally, or a Little Caesars might compete with a Domino's, like, it's all about working together to to again, shine a spotlight and rise a city. And I don't know how I'm born and raised here, so I don't know. I spend a lot of time in New York and LA. I don't know if it's like that, but no different than like AdCraft. Like we have women, like a women's leadership conference, and Linda Iaccarino is in, and Donna Speciale from Turner, and she's just like, there's something about Detroit that just feels different, like different than if I'm in Chicago, LA, or New York.
Absolutely. Yeah. So bringing it back to sort of the importance that sports has to a local community and that brand connection that happens with a sports organization. Why is that such a big part of Rocket, and why is that such a big part of just where marketing's going in general?
Yeah, I mean, well, one is certainly reach, and as you think about the access and the the distribution behind it, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, I'll give you an interesting example. Last week, at the Tour Championship, they did a Creator Cup. And I don't know if anyone followed this, but they took 15 influencers. The PGA Tour is thinking, like, how do we, remain relevant with audiences, and how do we utilize our IPs and marks? And, they put 15 players out, they played 9 holes, and they did distribution, open distribution on Peacock, YouTube, and we'll call it PGA Tour Live or ESPN Plus. And, we're getting the stats. It's just so interesting to see like growth in the sports and the sports space, and certainly with the women's sports has always been in place, but like just the absolute finally the WNBA after 25 years, and call it the Caitlin Clark effect, whatever it might be, growth, right? But it's also getting mass distribution. The NWSL now 25, 30 teams. And national with national distribution, and it's so interesting. We're always having constant conversations. Like 3-on-3 hockey is like the next thing that wants to launch. There's going to be, I don't know if they announced it yet, but women's professional lacrosse, right? And coming off the PLL, and we're going to play in those spaces. But for us, what I'm excited about Rocket is our brand continues to evolve and towards home ownership and with growth communities. Like I've been wanting to get more into like the entertainment, lifestyle, music spaces, and so we've yet to, we're soon to announce this. There's going to be a huge music lifestyle festival that we're announced here in Detroit with a partnership. Bedrock just wrapped up their second year of Afro Nation over here a couple weeks ago, right by Ford Field. We're going to do things here in Detroit, but we're excited, and that is part of our brand restage. We're going to start exploring like more larger partnerships in the sports, and we'll think about how that evolves and how can we do better with growth communities in our current sports portfolio, but more importantly, how do we expand outside of sports?
Yeah, and I think one thing I've noticed today that resonates with me is the multiple ways that you can extend partnerships, even if you can't do the big ticket national sponsorship. There's just so many unique ways to engage with the marketers on the sports side too.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's whether it's distribution, we're a big fan too of doing storytelling, either connected to the event or in the community. I'll give you a couple examples. One is with the Rocket Mortgage Classic. I mean, if anyone knows the business model, it's a 501(c), and all profits go to charities. And for us, we pivoted during the pandemic, and we were the first, we'll call it major sporting event, to identify the need to help with digital inclusivity. When the pandemic hit, it shined in an unfortunate spotlight that was there, but no one was talking about it, and particularly in core urban areas. At the time in 2020, when kids went home, people were working via remote, and the world of telemedicine came about. It shined the spotlight on, in Detroit, only 40% of our residents had internet access.
Unbelievable.
That's unfucking believable in 2020, right? And so, and as we stood up the Rocket Mortgage Classic, the golf tournament was canceled. It was as the world started to open up, we restaged the golf tournament. We had 6 weeks to do it with no fans, and then we decided at that moment to repivot our charitable focus and go, all right, and we launched 313 Connect and Bridging the Digital Divide. And here we are 3-4 years later. I was just with a Detroit Lions event. We were giving devices away at one of our community centers, and now it's upwards of 75-77% of the residents of Detroit have digital inclusivity technology or access to hub spots, and like that's via the sports partnership, right? And sometimes what I try to explain to our CFO in challenging times, like that's shit that doesn't show up on a pivot table. right?
Right,
And
right.
you want an ROI, you want blah, 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 like, and thankfully, you know, and it starts with Dan, like, that's our core at who we are, is like, one of our isms is numbers and monies, you know, don't lead, you know, they follow, they don't lead. And that's something I'm really blessed and thankful for, is like, yeah, we're gonna put on a great golf tournament, we're gonna have celebs and blah, blah, but you know what, at the end of the day, what I'm most proud of is the impact that, you know, via a sports partnership or the work we do in the community with our For More Than Profit philosophy, is we're helping inject change in the communities that we serve. And we do that in Detroit and Cleveland and Phoenix. And also a large initiative for us is addressing homelessness, right? And
Which
and we
is
started,
worse since the
which is
pandemic.
worse. And then we started with veterans. And you know, when you think about veteran homelessness, is I don't care what your race, color, creed, sexual orientation, political affiliation might be. I don't know one human in the world that, you know, that feels that a soldier that comes home and kisses the ground should also have to sleep on it.
Right.
And that's also a huge initiative for us, is how do we help eradicate veteran homelessness in all communities across the country.
You know, I don't know if you saw the panel about the DE&I, but you just articulated a very important business outcome of why underserved communities, underserved, LGBTQ and the Black communities, why that's such an important part of all branding, because it's a business outcome too. You're doing something for the community, but you're also serving a core need for your brand.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, it's injected in everything we do. It's not just a marketing, but as we think about tech, product portfolio, accessibility, and then above and beyond, like the core businesses that we run, there's also, you know, businesses that we acquire, and how can that help with that mission as well. Also, it's just thinking about going vertical, right? And you know, even though it's, you know, 20 and 21, I always tell this story is I correlate it to automotive and like SAR. Like, you know, imagine the SAR was like running 10 or 12, and 20 and 21, the mortgage SAR ran to 22, right? And we saw, you know, like and we saw some bad behavior in the marketplace, like, you know, the non-banks and banks that generally don't live in mortgages really jumped in when interest rates were at 40-year lows. And then I distinctly remember after the Super Bowl in 22, I woke up I went to bed at 4 a.m., woke up, and my CEO said, "Get your ass back in the office. You got some fucking work to do. Are you done screwing around?" And he's like, the shit hit the fan, the market's turned. And but one of the things I'm most proud of is, you know, I look out every day at the Hudson site, and even though, you know, we went from a SAR of 22,
right,
and the SAR is now like 8.5, mortgage SAR, if you will. There's not one less person working on going vertical, you know, at the Hudson site, working in the communities, and it'd be really easy. And you've seen that as a marketer, and for those of you that are in the media world, like, yeah, is our spend down? You're damn right it's down. But we're not dark necessarily. And, you know, you're welcome. And I look at non-banks and some mortgage companies that, you know, they were exercising bad behavior when the fish were jumping in the ship, and they rule the day now. Like, it's, you know, I look around, and, you know, for us, it's, you know, focus on what you can control. And, you know, we're optimistic. I mean, I was hoping 24 was going to get where we wanted to be, and, you know, we'll get past the election, but, you know, the tide seemed to be turning the right way, macroeconomic trends, you know, the market, obviously we're a very market and rate-driven environment, we're really optimistic about 25 and beyond, so we're retooling the ships, man. We got the refi ship at port, we're working on that. And but it's more importantly, it's, you know, purchase and making sure that we're bringing products and accessibility for home ownership and helping people achieve the American dream.
Amazing. Well, I got to ask all my questions.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time? Should I move to? Okay, so I'll start with you. What do you wish I just asked you that you didn't get to talk about yet?
Oh my gosh, I got to think about it. I'll talk about anything you want.
We could go to cars.
I'll talk cars.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you think about where
cars?
The world's going as far as automotive marketing goes?
Holy shit.
Hard to pull you out of your original DNA.
No, it's so easy to do it now. Like, everyone always asks me that. I mean, I did automotive for 25 years, tier 2, you know, at BBDO, and I absolutely love that. I mean, I tell young people, like, I'm so thankful that I cut my teeth in the retail world. When I was a young man in this business, I had ashtrays thrown at me. Like dealers would throw you out of the room, and I always tell the young people in the business, like you're 24 years old, you're working on Super Bowl. When you were 24-year-old in this business, you were lucky if you got to work on a half-page quarter black and white ad in the Bay Times Gazette. And if you walked into your creative director's office, you take that cigarette and throw it at your head, and now you're getting to work on Super Bowl.
Everything smelled like cigarettes back then.
And and working on Tier 2 for 17 years, and I was at BBDO, and I literally took the keys out of the door. And so 2010, Chrysler went into bankruptcy, came out of bankruptcy like General Motors, and we were the agency of record for 65 years. Campbell Ewald, 95 years with General Motors. And when both Chrysler and GM came out of bankruptcy, those agency relationships were severed. And I literally took the keys out of the door at BBDO. We were a 2,000-person strong agency. I was with the agency, helped wind it down. And then I got a fateful phone call. One of my credos in life is, never burn a bridge because you never know when you're going to cross it. And Susan Thompson, who was the media client forever, called me out of the blue one day, and she's like, we've turned the lights back on and no one's here. And, everyone retired. This is Mad Men around here. We didn't do any work. The agency did all the work for us. And we got this crazy French guy here, Olivier Francois, and we need a bunch of, and so about 15 of us joined Chrysler. And when I joined Chrysler, it was then Fiat, and Mr. Marchione was there. I saw like a totally different culture from what I had left, if you will, a year earlier. And, the 7 years that I was fortunate enough to work for Olivier, there was a range of emotions. Madness, excitement, I drank a lot, quite honestly. Like, it was fucking crazy working for him. That, like, he is, I think in automotive, one of, if not the most visionary, like, risk-taking CMOs. And
it's interesting, Chrysler's had a couple of those.
Yeah,
right?
And it's,
along the way,
people ask me, like, hey, I know I wouldn't be sitting in this chair today if it weren't for the experience I had working for Olivier, in which, like, take risks, don't settle for a no. And I think about, I'll sometimes show like old spots that we used to do at Fiat, and first of all, they're not even politically correct anymore. I can't even, it's like watching like 16 Candles or a movie, you start to show a clip, you start to show a clip from 16 Candles in a meeting, you're like, you know what, I think I gotta stop this because I'm gonna be in HR. And I look back on some of the stuff we did at Fiat, and Vince McConney is here, and Vince and I were on the team together, and there's stuff that we did then that I'd be fired for today, but it also showed me how to take risks.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
First best only. Like, I've always said, when I've been blessed enough to do 7 Super Bowl commercials, 4 at Fiat and 3 at Chrysler and 4 at Rocket, and
Congrats on the Barbie one.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
back to back USA Today ad, meter number 1, and outside of Bud Light and Doritos, it feels good to be a small little mortgage company in Detroit and go back to back number 1 with a Tracy Morgan and Barbie commercial. But that experience I had at Chrysler taught me, like, take risks, and I've always said, like, and when I see ideas come across, I'm like, in the automotive days, I'd be like, you know what? If Honda or Hyundai or a Kia or Mini Cooper would do it, let them do it. I ain't doing it. What I want to do is I want to do work, and I want other CMOs to walk in the room on that Monday morning and go, why the fuck didn't we do that?
Right.
And take risks. I mean, the thing that makes me most sad is when you watch Super Bowl, there's 65 advertisers. They're spending anywhere on a 60-second spot now $10 to $11 million. So many of them are just safe. They're safe, and the sales room is high-fiving. The CEO's telling his or her buddies at the country club, like, yeah, did you see the spot? But it's like, you didn't do anything. Like, you just talk to yourself. There's too much in automotive, I think, that still automotive marketers still just talk to themselves, and, a lot of automotive is still very sales-led, not marketing-led, but you're starting to see, and, I'm starting to see some good work coming out and some of the disruptors in the market. I mean, if you think about the disruption that Elon did. I mean, I distinctly remember in late 90s, early 2000s, sitting in meetings with dealers, and they were like, electrification, that little guy out in California, it'll never work. You know why? Because we have the most influence at state levels. Let him try and figure out how to buy a car. Or build a car. He'll never get distribution. We'll shut him down. Electric cars have been around since the 70s. Go over to Henry Ford. He's sitting in there. And he figured it out. And now Detroit's playing catch up. And whether, now it's like running one side of the boat to the other. I mean, it's more of my personal opinion than anything, but.
No, but it's seismic shifts.
Yeah.
These always happen. Automotive's, we could go for hours, but I feel like I need to ask our brother in here if there's any questions for Casey so I don't hog up all the time.
Hi, Casey. My name is Cynthia Lee, also a fellow MSU alum.
Yeah, go green.
Go white. My question for you is, as a CMO, what is your goals to bring not only to the company but to Detroit in the next 5 years?
Yeah, great question. One is growth. I mean, to be honest with you, is Cindy or Cynthia? Yes. Which one do you prefer? All right, I'll go Cynthia. That's my wife is Cindy. I call her Cynthia because it annoys her. So, so that's why I want to ask you first. I will tell you the last 2 years for us. Again, I'm using automotive terms. Like SAR went high, and then also as a marketer, like we've been in tier 2 mode. I mean, if I were to show you the creative reel, I am not proud of any work that I've been a part of for the last 2 years. Yeah, Rock Motors Classic and Draft, but like the work. So we're getting back. Like we've been in tier 2 mode. We're now ready to roll back again. And even from our employment levels, we were a high water mark at 26,000. I mean, the SAR, again, we went from 15 to 26,000 and 20 to 21, 19 to 20 and 21. And then as the macroeconomics in the market, we're back to like, we'll call it level water is 16, but now we're back. So, and in relative to Detroit, you see it. I mean, hopefully you see it, you feel it. Again, everything is going vertical. We're very close to some very exciting announcements. I cannot step on our chairman and founder because I will be in the Detroit River with cement boots on. But like the hamster wheel that Dan has about his vision for the continued revitalization of the city, and not only Detroit but Cleveland. I mean, we've amassed a lot of additional real estate in Cleveland. If anyone knows downtown Cleveland, it's very like Detroit. Downtown business district along the river there by the flats and what have you. I do not know this answer, but I am dying to find out what happens with the Ren-Sen. That's been a very interesting property for us for a decade. And Mary made the blessed decision to move the executive leadership or the team over to the Hudson site, which is going to open up next year. And Ren. I mean, this is my personal opinion. The Ren-Sen is not coming down. No. But
I'd be shocked.
Dan's had a very vested interest in that building and space up and down the river. I mean, if you were to look at what's owned now by Bedrock, I mean, it's up and down the river, and the Ren-Sen and the great work that General Motors has done with the riverfront and and making it more urban friendly for urban dwellers and and people enjoying it, and think about the connectivity to Corktown. Again, if you've been over to Michigan Central Station, and I saw the vision for what they want to do in Corktown over the next 3 and 5 years, I was blown away. And that's what I'm so excited. And one of the most moving moments I've had in the last few years was in 2020 or 2021, Dan had a stroke in 2019, and his first public appearance was at the Cranes Newsmaker of the Decade over at MGM, and I was emotional watching him, right? And at the very end, he said, "If you think we've done a lot in the past 10 years, we're just getting started." And Dan doesn't say that to say it and to get an applause. He puts the
corporate
money.
Courage.
It's right. It's not corporate bullshit. And again, there's things I can't say and what have you. But and I'm also interested as I want to retire
as an employee.
I want to retire here in a few years. I'm selling the house. I'm getting a place in downtown Detroit. I'm getting the kids the fuck out of the house, and I'm coming down here, right? And I can't wait to
I'm a little closer
be in
than
the
you
city.
are.
I know. Yeah.
Anybody else have a question for Casey?
Let me tell you one of my, because we were supposed to do some rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
And
I think
one
I
of
was
them
supposed to
was,
ask you.
I love telling stories. One of them was an idea you thought you were going to get fired for.
Oh, that's a really good
That's a good
question.
one. Can I tell?
I wish I
Vince.
thought of that.
Vince was with me. Did it go in Playboy or Sports Illustrated? Okay, well, Fiat was launching, and and I was like, I think Fiat is the perfect. Don't judge me. This is also 2012, and I was like, I think Fiat and the Fiat 500 Abarth, which is a little racer, we should be in Playboy. It was our bad boy. We were working on Charlie Sheen at the time, and so we started soliciting ideas, and it was crazy. Corvette in like 1985 was the last Detroit auto that ran in Playboy. I'm like, we're gonna be the next one, and Fiat has permission to do it. And there was an idea that was pitched to us of like, all right, well, what we want to do is we want to paint a bunch of women, body paint them, and they're gonna form the Fiat 500 Abarth. I'm like, that's crazy. Like, how do you do it? Like, we have no idea. I'm like, let's do it. And so we did it, and Vince and I were there, and it was like 3 days, and they were all like Cirque du Soleil performers, and they were like contortionists, and literally over the course of like 9 hours, they painted them, you know, inch by inch, and they were building it and projection mapping the car, and then ultimately, the women were painted head to toe, and they looked literally, you had to be like George Costanza, you had to like cross your eyes, and they literally formed the Fiat 500 Abarth.
Googleable? Like,
it
can
is.
I
If you were to
find this?
Google,
Okay.
if you were to Google like Fiat body art or Fiat body art, I think is what you would do. And we ended up running it in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And we told Olivier about it, but he didn't, like, I could tell, like, he didn't want anything to do with it. So he's like,
Plausible
yes,
deniability.
please, yes, it's okay, go ahead. And so we did it. And it was in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And listen, I had been cranking 80, 90-hour weeks. I was just so burnt out. It's in the SI swimsuit issue. And I was up north with my wife and 2 young kids, and I get a phone call from our PR person. Or Olivier texts me, and he's like, and he never texts me. And he's like, please call me. And I called him. He goes, what did you do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, have you read the headlines? And I'm like, what? And then, you know, so I'm Googling, and it was like Fiat naked women, Fiat, you know, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I have no idea what you did, but we're in trouble. The boss wants to talk. And so I like packed up my wife and kids, driving back down from like the homestead, and, you know, I'm like updating my LinkedIn. I'm calling people, and I'm like, this isn't good. And like the texts keep coming, and, you know, the media hits keep coming, and every headline is Fiat naked women. And by the way, they were not naked. And blah, 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 blah. And like I drive to Detroit, and he's like, I have to go talk to the boss, Sergio. I'll be right back. And so I'm in my office. I'm like, I'm boxing up my stuff, and like, this isn't good. And Vince is Vince is like, don't worry, I'll help you find a job. And Olivier comes into the office, and he goes, he loves it.
Amazing.
He loved it. And guess who took fucking credit for that piece of...
Of course, right.
Yeah, all of a sudden it was his idea, his execution, and blah, blah.
It happens.
But I always say, man, as a marketer, like, I try to always pride myself as like, look over the edge. If you're not looking over the edge, you're not taking risks, there are always going to be people behind you to pull you back. Look over the edge. And so that's always I like to tell that story, because it's like, it was a risk, and no one's ever done it since. And there's a reason why.
But there's people over the edge, too, that'll be there to help catch it, too. So, but it's all right.
All right, that's one of my stories. So, all right, we done? No, that's okay. We're okay. By the way, thank you. It's a Friday. That's not lost on me. And Andrea and the Brand Innovators event. I've been a proud partner with Brand Innovators for a number of years now. I'm in the advisory council, and Melissa Grady dragged me over to work with y'all. And what I said a few years ago was, I will come be part of your advisory committee, but only if you promise to do things here in Detroit. And you've lived up to that, and I appreciate it. And I don't see Alicia, but I saw Walker and the team back there. Like, thank you for hosting us here and the Brand Innovators. So if you've been to Brand Innovators event, great. If not, tell your friends. And, you know, hopefully, you know, I do this because I want to promote Detroit. I also expect our partners. And so if you're a partner, thank you. And if you're a client that spent the day with us, I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.